The Dr. Ray Podcast is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio. Here's today's monologue with Dr. Ray Guarendi.
Got a book that's going to be released sometime down the road. It was written probably 8-10 years ago. It's called Advice Worth Ignoring. It is 50 of the most common expert theories and notions that really can undercut your parenting. But they sound so enlightened. They sound so cutting edge. They sound as if you would follow these, you would have a Hallmark family, you know. Your card would be a Currier and Ives poster. One of these, I think it's one of the more nonsensical ones. Let your children work out their own conflicts with each other. It helps form conflict resolution skills. Don't step in unless they're firing a bazooka at each other. Let them learn how to get along. Now that, I got to tell you, that notion probably has more traction than, I think, a much, much more virtuous notion, which is don't let siblings mistreat each other. That seems to be common sense. So let's look at it. Let siblings solve their own conflicts. Typically, the more dominant sibling will solve the conflict in his or her favor. Dominant meaning more assertive or pushy or aggressive or smarter. Doesn't have to be the older sibling. It can be the younger sibling. You can have a more gentle-spirited older sibling. And in fact, the younger sibling is much more aggressive. So how do you make it fair? I guess is my question. Second, it assumes that the children want to resolve their conflicts. That they want to find a mutually, reciprocally satisfying solution. When in fact, they may just want to win. That's 2. 3, how nasty does it get? Okay, so they're not throwing bricks at each other. But what if they're name-calling? What if they're screaming at each other? How mean-spirited does that interchange have to be before the parent is allowed, psychologically speaking, to do something about it? 4th, let us assume that they are relatively equal in size, in feistiness, in intellect, in will to cooperate, which, again, just as an aside, that shows you some of the secular thinking that's out there because they don't acknowledge sin nature. They acknowledge that children are going to be naturally moved to work it out. Why? Because, well, they just want to cooperate. That's why. But let's assume everything is equal. What are you allowed to do as a parent? Are you allowed to set any rules? No name-calling, no jumping off the ropes, no soap in the eyes, no gouging. What are you allowed to do as a parent, you see? You're to stand by and just kind of watch them work this out. And here's the biggest one. Where's the guarantee they're going to work it out? What if it just gets uglier and uglier and they don't work anything out? At every level, that is an incredibly nonsensical notion. Now, let me qualify, because that's what psychologists do. If there is a minor disagreement without any ugliness, yeah, okay, so maybe they can work it out. But this piece of advice is not qualified. It is let siblings work out their conflicts, generally across the board. Now, I would think that most expert types would say, unless it gets violent, or unless they're hurting each other, What about mistreatment? What about vicious teasing? You got a sibling that's overweight. What about the one that just attacks the weight, huh? Do you expect respect from the kids? That they're not going to be disrespectful in their interactions with you, right? That teaches them not only to honor their mother and father, but it also teaches them how to treat people. You're the main person they got to get along with. Does that rule not apply when it's a sibling? Are they allowed to mistreat a sibling because of some kind of specialness to the relationship? Dr. Ray, my siblings and I, we fought terribly, but we are closer now than anybody. You know, siblings just go through that. That can be, of course. I fought with my sister. And we're close. That's because I'm a sweetheart. But did that make the fighting good? Name calling good? Assaults, torment, teasing good? Just because the relationship can survive a battering doesn't mean it's good to allow the battering. But this is one of those notions that, among many, that has just caught on. And part of it, I think, may be motivated when parents get lazy. Siblings go at it a lot because they live under the same roof. They breathe the same air. They look at each other. And they're partially socialized, partially moralized human beings. So therefore their strategies for working it out aren't going to be very good. So yeah, there is going to be that kind of bickering. But one, as a parent, do you want that in your home? Two, will that damage the relationship? I get a lot of kids in my office who do not at all like a sibling, their older sibling, because the sibling is merciless in their treatment of them. And they'll say things like, I wish he wasn't here, I wish he wasn't a brother, I wish he wasn't in our house. I can't stand him. Because the parents are not stopping this. Let siblings solve their own conflicts. Ranks high on the piece of advice that you should ignore.
More of Dr. Ray's Monologues can be found on his website, drray.com. Monologues, as well as full-length programs of The Doctor Is In, can be heard at AveMariaRadio.net and EWTN.com/radio.